Hi everyone, this is Jim Tolles. I blog regularly at spiritualawakeningprocess.com, and today I want to talk about what it means to be free of suffering. I think there's a lot of confusion about this term, and it's important to be a lot more clear about what it means to not feel this suffering that's within us. It doesn't mean being free of pain, and I think the two really need important distinctions because there's a lot of aspects to the spiritual path, especially as we go through healing, that are really uncomfortable. And you can be going through these things and releasing these old issues, and it just can feel like you're walking through nails and glass, and you're like, how is this better than what I was at before? And this often is derived from the sense that the spiritual path is going to make it all better. You're just going to have cake and dandelions constantly, and there's just never going to be any problems, and everyone's going to love you, and yada yada yada. And you can hear this in a lot of the way people talk about the spiritual path in a very immature way, where it's really the sense that, everything is positive, which also requires you to rate and judge everything as positive or negative. And that to me is initially a huge, huge issue because mainly how we're rating and judging things isn't really well understood. We don't understand the mechanism of our judgments. There are plenty of difficult things that arise for a lot of people in life that look like a negative at the time, and then after somebody's moved through it, they're like it's become a transformative phase of their life, and that without that difficulty, maybe it was a horrible divorce, maybe they lost a child in childbirth, like we're talking serious things. Like we're not just saying that somebody had a bad breakup. In the grand scheme of things, they're much more difficult and challenging things that can come up for somebody. But these difficult, challenging things often become the very crucible that allows somebody to evolve and to grow. And so if we have those sort of narrow judgments that we don't really understand, where we're saying this is positive, this is negative, we start to assume that the spiritual path is taking us towards something that is always just rosy and kindness, and it's not the truth at all. And I think there's a certain reality check a lot of people need on the spiritual path to really look at this world. And this world is full of pain. It can be very painful if you don't have enough food. So if somebody is not being able to eat enough, there's a distinction here between the mental suffering that can go on saying, I should have this, my life should be this way, or it should be another way, a lot that goes on inside. This is usually the suffering that we're really talking about. The ongoing pain of not having enough food is something else. So how we come into acceptance of something like that also allows us to be in a stronger place of saying, hey, I need to find a situation or find help so that I do have enough to eat and I can nourish myself, I can nourish my family and these types of things. But these issues will continue. And I really want people to be mindful of this and to not also judge that somebody should or should not have this issue. I mean, definitely from that deep heartfelt space in me, like I would like to be able to help everyone in the world, so that there is none of this sort of hunger going on. And there's plenty of discussion about, if we knew how to properly distribute money and resources, that there would be none. And that probably is true. But it's not for us to lay judgment on whether something should or should be happening. All we can do is start to look within and look at the suffering that we already carry. And it's usually in the form of a lot of ideas about how life should go, how we should feel physically, how we should feel emotionally. And these are kind of like pointing daggers at ourselves to try and make ourselves fit into a mold. And then, of course, there's more and more ridiculous suffering of like people should look a certain way, right? So you try to make your body look a certain way. In the Western culture now, we've got, a whole really strong trend for men now to be looking a certain muscular type, right? That we're supposed to be able to bench press 300 pounds or something. And somehow that is now what we should be, right? And so men are bulking up and eating ridiculous amounts of that creatine or whatever the latest protein supplement is to try and achieve something, right? And this is creating other suffering and expending lots of resources really needlessly because the body doesn't need that. And it's well known that women have been forced into physical looks for some time about how they should look, and that's how they derive value in our culture because a pretty woman is more valuable to men, and men want, kind of to own women as property. And like these things are still playing out down below, and this creates additional suffering as, some women can achieve these things and other women can't. And then because they can't achieve that sort of, appeal, they don't judge themselves well, and other people are, of course, are not judging themselves, as being beautiful enough, or at least not in their eyes, as on and on and on, these layers and layers of suffering that we create for ourselves. Letting go of these ideas brings so much more love and joy back. Because in truth, these ideas are just covering up the love and joy that you already are. But then pain and discomfort may be arising on a lot of different levels. As say somebody is a really beautiful woman, right? And this has been their identity. They could be a model, right? So to start to say these things are not true to how I want to feel in integrity with my body, and suddenly other people are like, no, you have to look this way, you have to weigh this much, you can't have too much fat, or otherwise you can't have this job. And so suddenly there's change, and certain friends are now judging this person because it's just a reflection of their own judgments. And so there's this pain of having to let go of relationships, and also being forced to face how you hold on to things and how you've attached to people and certain comforts and certain ways people look at you and how you can interact. And this is just one of many examples that you can go into. An example, I suppose, of, in the work world tends to be, being able to do a certain quality and level of work. And if suddenly you're not driving and striving to work, 60 hours a week to have a certain quality of work, and that goes away, then maybe some monetary benefits start to disappear, right? Some of these external things that have been kind of like, it's kind of like you're training a dog, here's a biscuit, good job, here's some money, you've done well. And this is one of the ways we get stuck in this. And so we start to step out of this, and maybe now you're taking a much lower paying job that, suits you much better. But then that brings up other things because you can't live a certain lifestyle. Right? So there's all sorts of interesting trade-offs in here that we've gotten into. But truly, you're trapped in those ideas, and that's where the suffering is, because we're much more expansive than what we think we can be. We aren't a set of ideas. We aren't a set of habits. We aren't a set of feelings. Like, we're much more expansive. When I talk about love, I'm not talking about just the romantic sexual feeling that people think about. I'm not just talking about the amazing love you can have for your children. Love embraces all, because it accepts everything as it is. So usually what happens to release that suffering is to release any resistance to how you are. And it's not a naive place to come to. It's not a place that won't require work and dedication. But there's a quality of ease that starts to rise within that can be very unsettling and very new for a lot of people. And that's when you start to find out what it's like to be free of suffering. And it's a strange thing that when you start to get rid of the walls, there was comfort there. And so suddenly you're like, wow, I can go in any direction. Where do I go? Right? And other issues that were hiding before start to be revealed. It's this fear of the unknown, this fear of being outcast or alone. All these things have been playing out underneath these grandiose schemes and these ways of interacting socially and with ourselves and creating certain looks and learning how to act and speak a certain way and all that sort of stuff. They start to get revealed. And this brings up further pain. As I said, like, you can come down this path and then pretty soon you're in a whole lot of pain. But the truth of the matter is that pain was already there. It was the whip at your heels that was keeping you running. That was keeping you in that suffering and those cycles over and over and over. And so as you start to churn to look at the whips that you've been snapping at your own heels and forcing yourself down these different paths, even if it's forcing yourself down a path to laziness where you keep avoiding claiming your power again and again, you just avoid those opportunities to be with somebody who really loves you, to take a job that really matters to you. This is also the reverse, and that's the same type of suffering where you just keep yourself locked in these patterns of, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, it's too much work, it's overwhelming. These two are ideas that perpetuate suffering. And that person may find that they have to become very dynamic and really overcome the inertia of their life. And that can take a ton of energy to start to release those issues. But the more you release it, the more open you are, and the more you naturally don't suffer. Because most of that suffer is kind of you pointing the gun at yourself, and arising that fear, of buying into that anger, of feeling that sadness and perpetuating those feelings through the stories you believe in. If you don't believe in any stories, you're free. You're dynamic. And the ideas that you do use become tools, tools to understand life. Tools like having the idea of gravity. It's a useful one, right? It's like, so if I walk off this cliff, I'm going to fall. That's gravity, right? It's a useful idea to know. But past that, we don't really need to think about it too much, do we? It's not a big deal. So being free of suffering really is the release of a lot of ego, but it's more than that too, because you'll start to find how it's all interconnected in your heart and your body, and the way your body's used to being, and coming into that sort of natural understanding inside. All these different layers. In the subtle, more psychic fields, those are also going to be releasing a lot of different things because most people are wholly committed to suffering on every level. And so on every level, it has to be released. So you can just be. And in that quality of being, there's this dynamic freedom, stillness, but that dynamism allows you to act. So it's not just lying around all day. And it's immensely loving and deeply at peace. So I hope this helps you in understanding a little bit more about what it means to be free of suffering. Once again, my name is Jim Tolles, and I blog regularly at spiritualawakeningprocess.com. Have a beautiful day.